The Atlanta Braves lose a heartbreaker, getting walked off by the Los Angeles Dodgers to extend the losing streak to 7 games. Let's talk about it.
This is the Braves Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Atlanta Braves. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into the Braves Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, covering your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. He's Jake Mastroianni. Follow him on social media at Shortstop Ball. Also, make sure you subscribe to both Locked On Sports Atlanta and Locked On Braves, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on audio, leave us a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever it might be, whatever Google uses for their podcast now. If it's YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop that next episode. And Jake, okay, the Atlanta Braves, we thought we had a win in the bag, right? Expectations were not high entering tonight. Bryce Elder on the mound. A lot of fans thought it was a done deal that the Braves were going to drop this game. And Atlanta goes into the 8th inning, leading the Dodgers, end up being walked off in the 9th. Overall thought, before we get into the details here, overall thoughts on just how this game progressed. And is it worse to be blown out from the very beginning or to have a lead late and let it drop like that?
I mean, from a fan's perspective, and maybe any perspective, I think I expected them to get blown out. And so if that happened, I think you just flush it and move on. But the way that it unfolded, it just makes it even more painful. And the fact that who walked it off. I mean, just don't turn your TVs on tomorrow. Don't check social media. It's all you're going to see is Ohtani walking off your Atlanta Braves. It's painful. Again, like I expected this to be a loss. I expected the Braves to lose this one, 10-2 or whatever, if they could imagine them scoring 2 earned runs. All 5 were unearned tonight that they did get. But when you got a big lead like that early, you got to win that game. And Brian Snitker, to his credit, I mean, he managed it like it was a must-win postseason game. He was doing things you see managers do in the postseason to try and win. And I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But yeah, this to me was far more painful.
Yeah, it was, you want to obviously win the game, but it hurts worse when you think you have it in the bag and you lose it, especially the way that you did. Before we get to how you lost the game, I want to get to a point where I feel like this is where the game kind of turned, and those little more cynical fans may have thought that this was the moment that Atlanta was probably destined to lose this game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
That's right. We have graphics now, guys. Yeah. So in the 6th inning, and credit to the bottom of this lineup, Brian Snitker shuffled this lineup for the game, right? I mean, you've got Nick Allen's in there. Stuart Fairchild's making his first start. Chadwick Tromp is behind the plate. Eli White's in center field. Guys that you've seen 1 or 2 of them in the lineup before. Well, not Fairchild, I guess, but never all at the same time. And they're doing their job. Atlanta gets the bases loaded in the 6th inning with no outs. Ozzie Albies on third, and I'm sorry, on first. And you think you feel good because you've got Marcell Ozuna coming up. You've got Austin Riley and you've got Matt Olson. And you can't get a run in. And like in retrospect, how big was that moment? And was that, was that emblematic of how the season's gone so far? Or was that just was that poor performance? Was that bad luck? What was that in the 6th inning?
Well, it was the turning point of the game there, Lindsay. But I mean, it's emblematic of this offense for a year now, almost. We're looking at it's not being able to hit with runner in scoring position. Although I know they got some tonight, but bases loaded, nobody out with your 3 best hitters coming up, and you can't score a single run. We talked about it before we started recording. I said at that point to myself, they're going to lose this game. Like, you just knew at that point, you didn't break it open. You didn't put the Dodgers away when you had the chance. You knew you were going to lose the game at that point. And then they had another chance in the next inning, had a runner at third, and Nick Allen, who had a great game, had him at third with 1 out, and you can't bring him in. It has been the problem with this offense for a year now, just not being able to get the job done to bring that runner in from third. I mean, all you need is a deep sack fly there. And Ozuna got one. It was medium depth. You got Chadwick Tromp at third, so it's a catcher running. I thought Brian Snitker, from the lineup to how he managed the bullpen, I thought this was actually a well-managed game by Snitker. The only questionable thing I had was, why not pinch run for Chadwick Tromp there, just to make sure you get a medium fly ball like that, give yourself the best chance of scoring that run. I don't even know, it was shallow enough. You may not have even sent him on that either. But that would be the only kind of questionable thing that I have. I know there's all the fire Snitker post out there after a loss like this. I actually thought this was a pretty well-managed game from the lineup, and then the in-game decisions. Just, you got players at some point got to step up and make plays, and they're just not doing that. Ozuna, Riley, Olsen, none of them did it in that moment. Daysville, Rysell at the end of the game, none of them stepped up and made the plays. At the end of the day, the players have to make the plays, and they just didn't. But that point, when you leave bases loaded, nobody out, against that Dodgers team, you don't put them away. That was the turning point. That's when you knew, okay, Braves are going to find a way to lose this game.
On the in-game decisions, I do want to get your opinion on this, because I'm not sure how I feel about the decision to take out Daysabel Hernandez. You bring him in for the last out. You get Mookie Betts. He sticks around for the next inning, and that, and he gets Teoscar Hernandez to fly out early. Michael Conforto singles, and you immediately pull him and go to Raisel Iglesias. I understand it's your closer. I understand the pressure you need to get the 5 outs. Part of me thinks, if you're going to trust him enough to go to him in that situation, leave him in the game versus making the change, because Iglesias comes in. He's thrown once this season, right? Everything's up. He walks Will Smith. He does get a ground out of Tommy Edman, but then he leaves a changeup at the top of the zone. Max Muncy gets that double. We're going to get to Max Muncy in a minute, by the way. But in retrospect, is sticking with Daysabel maybe the thing to do there versus being very aggressive at getting him back out of the game? Or is this we've got to get a win, get your closer in as soon as you reasonably can?
Yeah, it's an act of desperation. I mean, it's exactly what it is. As I said, he managed this like this was a must-win Game 7. And in that situation, you don't want to have the Kimbrel memes of him sitting in the bullpen while you lose the game. And so you get your best reliever in there. I have no problem with it. Iglesias he wasn't, I don't want to say he wasn't ready, but he certainly wasn't Iglesias. Everything was up. And when you watch Iglesias pitch, it's a sinker diving down and into a righty. It's a slider going down and away from a lefty. Everything is down except maybe the four-seamer that he'll throw up there. But in that inning, everything was up. I actually thought in the few pitches that he got to throw in the 9th inning, I thought stuff looked much better then. The ball Ohtani hit out, I thought it was a really good pitch. Ohtani's just maybe the best player of all time and made a really great swing. But in that inning, Iglesias just unfortunately wasn't sharp from the get-go, and he was put into, came in with a 2-0 count. I think that might be my only question. If you were going to go to me, go with him on a fresh at bat. Either let Daysville finish that at bat, or you should have brought him in to begin that one. That's the only thing that I would question there.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the idea of going to him, but I think I agree with you. Give him at least give him like the start of an at bat. Let him get through where he is and don't make him try to recover from somebody else's 2-0 count. In just a second, I want to get to the player of the game and some of the other notes we have here. We'll do that next, right here on the Braves Postcast. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. If you want a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. It's one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein. Jake, it's 10% of your daily value. Plus, packed with fiber, better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. What other snack do you need 2 cups to eat? Pistachios, my absolute favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Okay, so Jake, we're talking about the 6-5 Dodgers victory over the Braves, and we've kind of covered the Raisel Iglesias decision. We've covered the noble Tiger there in the 6th. I do want to give a moment, I think, to the bullpen as a whole. And the real moment to me when I had the faith that maybe Atlanta's going to get the breaks. They had plenty of breaks in this game, right? Max Muncy, had 2 throwing errors, gifted them a run, kind of like how Mookie Betts gifted Atlanta a run the day before. Mookie Betts has those 2 errors early, gets Atlanta some runs, and then gets the double to tie it up later. But in the 5th inning, you have bases loaded, and Enyel De Los Santos gets a double play, comebacker back to him. He immediately turns and fires to third, gets the lead runner, Andy Pages, off of third to get 2 outs, and then he ends up getting out of the inning. The bullpen as a whole, outside of the Iglesias runs, it feels like they did a really good job of picking up from an effective yet short Bryce Elder start.
Yeah, that was the turning point for me where I thought, okay, maybe the Braves can do this. Is when
the first of 2 turning points in the game.
Yeah, that was the possible good turning point where I thought, okay, that went our way. They got out of that. Maybe they can actually do this. Pierce Johnson comes in. He looks good. Dylan Lee as well. Daysbel good when he came in the 7th, not so much when he came out in the 8th. A little erratic, falls behind 2-0 there to Will Smith before they bring in Iglesias. But overall, I thought the bullpen was good. And obviously not a situation that you want to bring in Iglesias a lot of the times. I know he did it a lot last year, needed to. The Braves absolutely had to have it from him. But he just clearly wasn't himself. He's going to have better days than that. But up until that point, as we were talking beforehand, the bullpen was looking like it was going to be the player or players of the game with the way that they were holding the Dodgers down. And look, that's a lot to ask. You only get 4 innings from Elder, and you're asking the bullpen to hold down that lineup for the rest of the game when your offense is unable to add on. But look, as long the way this bullpen is, I don't worry too much about it. I know a lot of people are worried about the bullpen. I still think it can be a really good bullpen, and for the most part, they have been good. Just again, players didn't make big plays tonight and big situations for the Braves, and they did for the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's really hard to kind of watch this game and say the issue with this game was the bullpen and not the offense, right? We saw in that entire losing streak up to today, it was terrible with runners in scoring position. You got a couple of those converted today, but it's still obviously an issue. It's still obviously not fixed, and it's going to be a talking point until they start showing otherwise that they can hit with runners in scoring position. You did mention the 4 innings out of Elder, though. So 3 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. Gave up 2 homers. If I remember right, I think they were both solo shots.
No, one was a 2-run.
One was a 2-run, one was a solo shot. There you go. So all of the runs he allowed came off the 2 homers. But it felt like other than a couple sliders left up, this was maybe a little bit more of the classic Bryce Elder that we saw in 2023 versus the version that had an ERA of over 6 last year. The sinker, the slider, he wasn't throwing in the 93, 94 like he's done in Gwinnett. I want to say he averaged 91 with the sinker. He averaged 91 with the 4-seamer, but picked up 8 whiffs, 31% CSW. Other than the length, this is really enough out of Bryce Elder. And I think that kind of answers a little bit of a question I had about what do you do with Reynaldo Lopez maybe being down for a while. If you need to throw Bryce Elder out there a few times, maybe he's still got enough to where he can keep you in games, and he's not going to be the problem.
I mean, against the Dodgers lineup, you give me Bryce Elder for 4 innings, 3 runs. I think I take that. It's not ideal because you're asking your bullpen to do a lot, but I think he did throw the ball pretty well. The walk to Conforto before that 2-run home run to Edman, I think was the real killer there. That was, after the Braves had put some runs on the board, it's a leadoff runner. That was the real killer right there. You don't do that, and you give up a couple of solo shots, then obviously it looks a lot better. You want him to go 5. I mean, if Elder can give you 5 innings and 3 earned or less every 5th day as your 5th starter, at least until Strider comes back, I think you can live with that. The problem is, the stays on schedule, his next potential start could be against the Phillies lineup. And that's obviously not ideal, but again, he can be okay against certain lineups, but in situations like this against the Dodgers, the Phillies, it's just the margin of error is so slim for Bryce Elder.
Yeah, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. You mentioned the next starters. Spencer Schwellenbach is announced for Friday night for the home opener. AJ Smith-Shawver on Saturday, and then Sunday would be Grant Holmes. That Phillies series starts on Tuesday. So yeah, you're going to have Elder in there. You're going to have Sale in there. it's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens. Folks, this has been the Braves postcast after Atlanta's 6-5 loss to the Dodgers. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, Apple, Spotify, whatever Google uses for their podcast. Now, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop that next episode. Stay tuned. Jake's going to have more about this series, the Braves as a whole, on Locked On Braves. Until next time, this has been the Braves postcast.